So, Matt, before we take off on the particular teams and the previous games we just saw heading into this semifinal weekend, the narrative of, and this is not debatable, a lot of SEC bashers think it is, the last 15 plus years, the SEC has been the best conference by any and every measurement. It's not close. The Big Ten has, for most of that time, been the second best conference, not every year, but generally been the second best conference. Now we've arrived at a place where, and you know me, I am the last one to jump out with some kind of like rash take that, okay, the SEC lost one bowl game, Missouri lost to Army, okay, the SEC demise is here. You know, I don't do anything like that. So once the SEC lost a couple bowl games, people were piling on the SEC, and I was going, hang on, just a second. We still have, let's say, 6 or 7 bowl games left, postseason games. Plus, let's understand that while the SEC was not dominant in non-conference play, clearly, and I'm the guy that runs through all the metrics, the results, and seeds the teams and so forth, that the SEC did have the best non-conference season. So even if their bowl season is not the best, once we get through this entire season, we'll lay it out here at the Voice of College Football and run through what we believe to be the rankings. But it's going to be the most interesting breakdown that we've had here ever because of the SEC's slight demise. But even at this point, even though things look tremendously strong for the Big Ten, I want to get through this weekend because there is a possibility Texas wins the national championship, Penn State loses to Notre Dame, and you had 2 Big Ten teams stall in the semifinals and the SEC still come through. And then if that happens with what's happened throughout the rest of the bowl season and the non-conference schedule, I think the SEC would still have an argument about being, albeit a close, razor sharp number one, razor close number one. But it's looking very good for the Big Ten, especially with the way Ohio State's playing.
That's absolutely true. And, you know, if people who watched this Big Ten show 2 weeks ago, just before Christmas, here at the Voice of College Football, after the first round, you know, if you heard me discuss Ohio State, Oregon, I said, no, I have no idea who wins the game. But I did say, like, I wouldn't be shocked if it was a blowout either way. It turned out to be a blowout for Ohio State. And Ohio State is the most talented team in the country. Like, that talent showed out. Like, you saw the fully maxed out, fully realized, actualized potential of that team against Oregon. Like, that was just a flamethrower. It was a blowtorch to a 13-0 Oregon team, which, you know, by far had the best regular season of any team, and Oregon looked like JV. You know, this was men against boys. Pick your analogy, pick your phrasing. Ohio State's obviously the most talented team, and you put that up against Texas, playing with its food regularly, and paid the price against Georgia, let Clemson hang around far longer than it ever should have, and then up 16 with 10 minutes left against Arizona State. And frankly, you know, if targeting is properly called, ASU has 1st and 10 at the Texas 38 with a minute left. Doesn't guarantee ASU wins. You know, Texas fans and SEC fans have been getting at me when I tweeted what I said, like that call really mattered. Okay, I'm not guaranteeing an ASU win if that targeting call is made, but it's more than 50-50. Like, it is more likely than not that ASU is able to get at least 20 yards. And again, I know the kicker had some problems, but, you know, if you get 20 yards, 35-yard field goal, that's not a coin flip. You know, that's more likely than not that ASU wins that game. And, you know, Mark and everyone here watching at the Voice of College Football, I mean, I know it's a Big Ten show, but just, you know, we're talking about the playoff, of course, and we're talking about the Texas-Ohio State matchup. Just for a moment, like, Steve Sarkisian went back to his Washington days for a little bit in that Arizona State game. You know, it took Sark a long time to figure it all out in terms of how to be a really good head coach. Like, he didn't put the pieces together at USC. Now, of course, you know, his bout with alcoholism, which is a non-football thing, that obviously got in the way. But nevertheless, Sark needed a while to learn how to be a really good head coach. And, like, this took me back a decade. Like, what was he doing in that fourth quarter, calling all the passes that he was calling with a 16-point lead, then an 8-point lead. Like if he calls running plays on first and second down, and also Texas was snapping the ball with like 10 to 12 on the play clock too. I mean, Sark wasted several minutes. That's not an embellishment. Like he wasted at least 3 game minutes with passes that went incomplete, not running the ball, not using all of the play clock. That was as horrible a coaching job from Sark as I've seen in a long time. Again, this took me back to Montlake. This took me back to the Washington days when, 7-win Sark, 7-win Sark, was the epithet lobbed by USC fans and other Pac-12 fans. Like Sark he took a mental vacation in that fourth quarter. So Texas has just been doing enough to get by. And meanwhile, Ohio State is in, death machine mode. Like, this is like the 2017 Golden State Warriors. This is, to use a college football analogy, this is 1995 Nebraska. Like that Ohio State performance against Oregon, an unbeaten team, you could draw a very clean, neat historical parallel to the 1996 Fiesta Bowl, one of the great Steve Spurrier Florida teams of all time. Unbeaten regular season, just ran through the SEC like a knife through warm butter. Danny Werfel at the height of his powers. Nebraska hangs 62 on him, beats him by 38. It's just a total wipeout. Ohio State over Oregon like that, 34-0 before you can blink. The other football game I compare this to in the historical annals, Super Bowl 22. Remember the Washington Redskins hanging 35 on the Broncos in the second quarter in San Diego. This game also felt like that. So like a really, really good team with a great quarterback, and it was just turned into fine powder, but with an overwhelming display. So, you look at Ohio State and Texas, these are not equals, at least not going in. Ohio State is Mike Tyson, and we'll find out if Texas can play the Buster Douglas role to perfection.
Yeah, just hearkening back to Broncos Redskins, the Redskins were down 10-0, and then just put on a blitz like we've never seen in Super Bowl history
And just quickly, Florida was up 10-0 over Nebraska in that Fiesta Bowl too. Right. It's funny how it works that way.
That to deliver at the time, the greatest most prolific passing effort in the history of the Super Bowl and touchdown passes, and have the all-time rushing performance at the same time, shows you the type of offense that was displayed by the Redskins on that particular San Diego afternoon. All right, back to the here and now, because Matt and I can get stuck in the past, but blame me on that one. So BamRuff 62, just to clarify here, and we are sticklers for accuracy here at the Voice of College Football. With all the piling on, wasn't the SEC 20-10 in non-conference play in the regular season? No, sir, they were not. So if you're talking about all non-conference games, including FCS and Group of Five, these conferences win like 80-some% of their games. So you're wrong on both sets of statistics here. So if you're talking about all the games, I've run the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but the SEC is like 65-12 or something in all non-conference games. If you're just talking about against the other conferences in the regular season, no, the number was like 13-9. So it was not.
Maybe was he talking about power? Is he talking about Power 4? Is he talking about top 25? There might be a subset.
Neither would apply, Matt, because I know that the SEC was something in the 13-9 range non-conference against the Power 4, the other power conferences. So BamRuff, we appreciate you, but don't know where you pulled that stat from. But we that's one of my favorite tasks. As soon as the season's over, we run through all the metrics, all the numbers, compare the conferences, which has been a very anticlimactic endeavor in previous years, because I knew the SEC was going to be number one, but it's going to be fascinating this year. But Ohio State and Penn State, boy, can you imagine if the Big Ten had an all Big Ten final for the national championship on ESPN, who has lost the Big Ten contract and is, the bastion of the SEC. That would just pain them to have to broadcast that game.
I mean, the storylines would be amazing, and you know, the irony in all this is that Kirk Herbstreit is an Ohio State alumnus who really is not very well liked by a large segment of the Ohio State fan base. So, my goodness, like the media news cycle. Forget about the college football news cycle, but the sports media news cycle would be absolutely insane if that happens. And of course, the other really, really interesting possible storyline is Marcus Freeman against Ohio State. You know, because, you know, after Ryan Day lost to Michigan, like there was a lot of Marcus Freeman to Ohio State chatter among the Ohio State fan base. Not saying it was ever a possibility, but just, you know, like the name circulated, the conversation occurred among Ohio State fans. So that would be pretty special as well.